Hey everyone, my name is Sandeep, and if you are new here, this channel is all about photography and videography and topics surrounding those two. So if you are interested in those, please leave a subscribe and hit that bell icon so next time I upload a video, you will be notified. So from the title, you can probably tell what this video is about, but why am I making it in 2021? Because I still know a few people who are buying EOS R after R5 and R6 were released, so I think this video is justified. So yes, there are already a lot of videos on YouTube showing us how to set up 120 frames per second on EOS R, but it doesn't show the whole workflow of how to use that file. And I had to post this question on a couple of forums and Facebook pages to finally get the answers I was looking for. So I decided to make the video hoping for someone like me can find the answers much easily. So you may have noticed that 120 frames per second is not listed where rest of your other frame rates are listed. That is because this is something you have to enable before you can see it, and the way you do it is you go exactly where you go to change the frame rates, and just when you get to that page, scroll down and where it says high frame rate disable, click on that and enable, and once you do that it'll be ready to go. But you'll notice it's 119.9 frames per second, and the other important thing to notice here is 720p. It's only 720p unlike other 1080p's and 4K, so make sure you are aware of that. So every YouTube video that I found online showed me up to this, showed me how to enable 120 frames per second. But what do you do after this? They didn't go into details of what this 120 frames per second looks like on the camera or softwares, or how to bring it in and stuff like that. So the first thing you'll notice is once you record something at 120 frames per second, if you hit info, you'll see that the information says it's only 29.97 frames per second. So that was confusing for me. At first I thought my memory card wasn't fast enough to record it in 120 frames per second. So I ended up spending a lot of time researching why it wasn't recording in 120 frames per second, not realizing that it was. And then once you import it to the software such as DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, it also says it's only in 29.97 frames per second. So if you're used to working with 59.94 frames per second on EOS R, you know you bring it on to slow it down, you bring it on to the 24 frames per second time frame or timeline, and then you slow it down by 40%, and you get a slow-mo. But that is not the case here. Just because you recorded something in 119.9 frames per second, when you bring it into 24 frames per second timeline, you can't slow it down by 20% and expect it to be in a slow-mo. It'll just be really jittery. You can do the test yourself. So since this 119.9 frames per second is already interpreted as 29.97 frames per second in the camera, at max you can slow it down by 80%, and that's how you get your slow-mo. And that is what it took me forever to figure it out, but now you know the easier way. From all that gibberish that I tried to explain, if you didn't get anything, just know that just because it is recorded in 119.9 frames per second, you cannot slow it down to 20% on 24 frames per second timeline to get a slow-mo. It's gonna be really jittery as it's missing a lot more frames. The other thing I noticed was 120 frames per second is only in 720p for EOS R, and I wanted to see how better it is compared to 60 frames per second. So here is a few of the comparison of push pin being dropped inside the water. The right side is 109.9 frames per second, interpreted as 29.97 and slowed down by 80%. And the 720p obviously is losing a little bit of detail there, as you can see. But is that slow-mo worth for you to lose all that megapixels? Well, that's for you to decide. If your project absolutely requires you to go up to 120 frames per second, I think it's definitely usable. But I wouldn't be using it for events and stuff like that I do. But it's there if you have to use it. After comparing the 60 frames per second and 120 frames per second, I decided to compare it to 120 frames per second without slowing it down by 80%, and see how that looks. You can see a minute difference in reduction of speed, a reduction of slow-mo. Like, these are the same clips, right? One is just reduced by 80%, one is at 100%. So you see those pins coming in late. It's delayed by just a little bit. So that's that. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave a comment and I will get back to you, as I really enjoyed this research project kind of thing, and I would love to do more if people out there has questions. And not just loss of megapixels, but when you set the camera to record in 119.9 frames per second, you also lose the AI servo and image stabilization inside the camera. Those are not applicable when you set it up to this frames per second. So that's also something that you may want to keep that in mind if you do plan on using it. So yeah, I think that my main thing that was confusing was I tried to slow it down by 20% like any other frames per second I was playing with, but that did not work. So the last thing to know in this video is both of these 1080p and 720p files were exported onto 4K timeline 24 frames per second. So even after exporting 720p file onto a 4K timeline, it's not as sharp as 1080p, but I think it's usable. It really depends on kind of project you're working on. I certainly won't be using it. I think 60 frames per second is slow enough for me. But if you plan on using it, hopefully this video answers all the questions regarding 120 frames per second on EOS R. Again, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you guys learned something from this video. This is my first straight up tutorial information kind of video, so I apologize if I'm all over the place. I tried making a better list to organize, but didn't work out. So hopefully next time I make something like this, it's better organized, easier to follow kind of thing. And as always, I apologize for any background noise you may be hearing. That's just the nature of this household. It's just gonna happen, so deal with it. No, just kidding. But yeah, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. Thank you for your support. Thank you, all 63 of you. And the last video I uploaded has the most views so far, so that's a good thing, I guess. And yeah, hopefully this video pans out so I can do more of these kind of videos too. Yeah, peace, see you in the next one.